Hey everyone, how are you doing? Happy Tuesday. My name is Sharyn Combs, and this is Mr. Lawayne Perkins. And
Hey,
this
hey.
this is
Yeah.
not
Knowledge and nonsense.
yes. Hey man, Lawayne's down here in Dallas visiting, and I'm so excited that I was able to spend some time with him over these past few days and just learning different things, talking about some of the current events. One of the main current events right now is they're talking about the urethoscopes and just some of the dangers with that. Lawayne, have you heard anything about that? Or
Yeah, it's been thank goodness for the FDA and some of those market watch responses. We're able to connect with users all around the country. So in healthcare, as big as we think we are, we're really a really intimate community. So what happens on the West Coast, the East Coast also can learn from and grow from. So it is a lot going on, indeed.
yeah. So I'm hopeful that as it relates to death or really just any adverse conditions from surgeries or procedures, that those things could be minimized. I know this human era, and I know with technology, there'll be some bumps that we won't even discover until we bridge new areas. But again, always hoping to minimize those areas um, of bumps that have an adverse effect on the livelihood or the quality of life for individuals. But
Yeah,
tonight,
it's
go ahead.
unfortunate, Sharyn. It's really unfortunate. But this is how we learn in some cases. This is how
That's
we
crazy,
learn.
right?
Yeah, it is very crazy. It's very crazy.
Hey, listen, so tonight, y'all, some of you already know we're gonna talk about workplace bullying. I've heard some of the stories, I saw some of the posts, I saw some of you who are more influential just stating about lateral violence and hoping that those topics are hit. I am excited to get into workplace bullying, incivility, different things like that within the workplace, and to even say what bullying is not. We want to be sure that we know that standard disciplines or reprimand that doesn't necessarily equate to bullying. So
Right.
with bullying, you're going to have force or coercion or threat. Within the workplace, you're going to have those same things, but most times it's like there's a power dynamic or a perceived power dynamic if it's lateral perceived power dynamic, but I'm not the expert on that. We do have an expert who's going to be with us tonight, so are you ready to get into this, Lawayne?
Let's do it. I want to dive
I'm
right in.
so excited. All right, excellent. So y'all know what it is. Give us about 20 seconds. We'll be back with our guest and see you in just a moment.
Welcome to Knowledge and Nonsense.
Hey everyone, and we're back. We're here with Dr. Phyllis Quinlan. Phyllis, I'm so glad that you're able to be here with us today. We're going to talk about, again, workplace bullying, and I'm excited about getting into workplace bullying. So can you tell us just a little more about you? I heard you speaking in Denver. I've heard you a couple of places, and it was so helpful.
Thank you, Sharyn, and good evening to you and to Mr. Perkins. It's just a thrill to be here. It really is, and I was so pleased when you reached out and invited me on this wonderful program. Thank you so much for that. So I am a doctorate prepared nurse. I've been a nurse for about 43 years. Believe it or not, I cringe when I say that. And I'm also a professional coach. And I've been a professional coach for the better part of 20 years. I am certified by the International Coaching Federation. So I had a nursing career for about 37 years in various venues, either as a clinician, an educator, or an administrator. And then I went into coaching full time. And I have been the career coach for AORN since 2012. So we're coming up on about 9 years of having an affiliation with AORN, which I'm really grateful for. So I do have my own consulting firm, and it's a full service consulting firm. I do a lot of legal nurse consulting. I work with healthcare organizations. And my passion really is working with individuals as a professional coach to help them reach, a greater sense of well-being. And, and if they feel well about themselves, success is right around the corner. They don't need me to help them be successful. I really want to be able to just empower them to have a sense of well-being and confidence about themselves, body, mind, and spirit. And when I work with professional organizations or consult with healthcare organizations, I really want to lean into working with leadership, because I believe in top-down healthy organizations. If your leaders are healthy, more than likely your staff will be healthy as well. And I just really am devoted to creating healthy work environments.
Man, that's awesome. And it's such a need, in healthcare. Healthcare is a place where the people who work in healthcare are so used to giving out, but just because you're giving out toward patient care and other things within healthcare itself, there is such a need to maintain that healthy environment, to maintain healthy practices, best practices. And so I'm excited. I wanted to, I'm jumping right in, Lawayne. I'm just going to do it. Let's go for it. And for those of you who know, please go ahead and share the video. If you have any questions, you can put them in the comment box. Or if you don't want your name specifically out there because maybe you're in a place right now where that may adversely affect you, please text your question to 214-717-5921. As a matter of fact, you can go ahead and text that number now so that as you want to keep going like back and forth, that we can have that open dialogue there. And I will ask those questions to Phyllis, and no one has to know that you're the one texting them in. But one of the things, when I first started, I do something 4 months out of the year. I officiate basketball, which means I wear stripes and I blow a whistle. I run up and down the court with these varsity boys and girls, and I blow this whistle, right? But when I first got into that advocation, it's such a male-dominant area. And when I first got in, just the amount of inappropriate behavior, comments, like it was mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing on this side of life, but when I was in it, I was uncomfortable. I was nervous. I was like, well, if I say something, will I not be assigned games? Will this affect me financially? How long can I hang out because it's all men and they start drinking, and after a certain time, I'm a female. Is my presence here indicating my agreement to something? It was crazy. It was crazy how much energy. And so when I spoke to my mentors at that time, they were like, well, this is what it is. You knew what it was when you got into it, like deal with it. There was no help. It was just like, like you in the boys' locker room. So you have to deal with it. So how do you, when people are experiencing abusive behaviors or incivility, I love the fact that you say incivility. It's so classy. How do you help people who have to deal with incivility within healthcare, like your scrub techs who sometimes may hear a harsh word from a physician? I know it's rare, but
I wish it was rare. So Sharyn, first let me just say, I just love pioneers. I really do. And to hear that you are trying to break through and officiate basketball games, as a woman of color, as a woman, I'm sitting here just smiling inside out, that you are brave enough to pioneer. And, pioneering is tough work. I don't care if you're the first person in your family to go on to higher education, the first person to decide that they're going to officiate basketball, or even, some of our advanced care practitioners in nursing, or NPs and PAs, that first wave of anything puts up with a tremendous amount to try to establish a new norm and raise awareness that change is with us and change can be positive. So bravo.
Thank you. I'm learning from the best.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Phyllis, first and foremost for me, thank you for being here. And thank you for your impact on serving our community. Frontline workers, nurses, anyone helping to save a life in any capacity needs to hear our appreciation much more often. In the workplace, I want to ask a question. How can we identify what bullying is? How do we identify it?
Can you still see her?
I cannot.
Okay, she'll be right back then. She'll be right back. She's already back. Hey, Love this. This is why we keep it live, though. We actually keep it live for this reason. So it's like, no, this is real time. We're not going
Yeah,
to make it pretty for you because, yeah, we want it to be authentic.
absolutely.
We're gonna put a prayer out there to Archangel Gabriel, the Archangel of Communication, to keep all the IT square.
Yes, yes. I'm sending it with you. Go ahead, Lawayne.
Before were interrupted, how is someone in the workplace able to identify bullying? How is that identified? What are the factors?
Yeah. So, I think anybody who's been targeted as a bully, by a bully doesn't need anybody to tell them what is bullying all about. I mean, that it, you feel it. And, the work that I have done on disruptive behavior. So that, let's call that the umbrella, category here. You have, people who show up ready, willing, and able to do the job, want to do a great job, want to work in a collegial team-like manner. And then you have this proportion, fortunately, a smaller proportion of people who engage in disruptive behavior. And I've kind of categorized disruptive behavior into two groups. So there is the actual bully, and then there is the person who's chronically uncivil. So when I crisscrossed the country with the AORN leadership, with AORN to speak to AORN nurse executives and leadership across the country, we pretty much came up with the thought that about 85% of our staff, and maybe 88%, are really ready, willing, and able to come to work, do a great job, work in a team-like fashion, have lives outside of work so they have full, complete lives. Are really just good souls trying to serve the public. They're in human services, and there they are. And then there is this 13 to 15% of people who engage in this disruptive behavior. What we determined at that time is that the larger proportion of that group really engages in chronic incivility. And chronic incivility, in my interpretation of this disruptive behavior, is, that guy or that gal who can't get to work on time for love nor money, who can't get back from their break. They can never finish their work independently. It's always something. You're having a tough day. You go to sit down to have a cup of coffee, and all they want to do is talk about the latest drama in their life. You're at a meeting and they're acting like they haven't finished high school, sophomoric, they're on their phone. They're just annoying. And I usually say, just close your eyes and think of somebody who's not really trying to harm you, who's not looking to belittle you, disrespect you, abuse you, undermine your confidence, make themselves look good at your expense. But just that person who, if you close your eyes and say, if they called in sick today, it would be just so much nicer at work. We all have
them. Indeed.
Fortunately, these folks, the pebble in your shoe, annoying, get away from me, kind of distraction on top of distraction, embarrassing behavior, but not harmful behavior. They harm themselves more than they harm others. All right. Maybe. They make up the larger proportion of that. And then the smaller proportion, which is about 3 to 5% of your staff, we find, will engage in true bullying behavior that I akin to narcissistic behavior. And even though bullying is systemic in every venue of employment or organization, in healthcare, I call a bully a narcissist with a license. And you have to understand the personality of a narcissist in order to fully understand and then manage or navigate your way through working with a bully. But I want to say to both of you and to all of your listeners right now, please do not try to take on and do a corrective action with a bully or someone who's chronically uncivil without first gaining the consensus and the partnership of executive leadership and human resources. If you decide to take this on yourself, which many middle managers try to do, all right, but if you try to do that, you could find yourself in a situation, especially with the bully who's very conniving and knows how to gaslight, that you might be the one who now is being seen or being displayed as you're harassing me and
Wow.
you're the bully and your reputation can then and career can be damaged, as opposed to you trying to, do the right thing by your staff and your organization. So my book, it's a quick read. It's less than 100 pages. And really, it's not just understanding and effectively managing bullying and incivility in healthcare. It's keeping your career safe while you do it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So interesting. I can tell you, team, right now there are several managers sending me text messages as you're speaking. They're looking at their team dynamic, and they're able to identify that 5%. They're able to look back in their career trajectory, and have been in the presence of someone who fits in one of those two categories. This is an amazing topic.
Yeah, and I don't think you can be an adult and work in an organization, a group, a department where you have maybe a dozen or more, employees, where this isn't going to happen, that you're not going to have that person who just can't get out of their own way and self-sabotages and brings the whole morale of the team. And, that chronically uncivil person, again, they're not harmful to the individual the way a bully might be harmful, but they pose a threat to the team because there's such a distraction that there's an increased risk for error or poor performance, or, I call these people energy vampires.
Yes.
That
yes.
Sit down to have a cup of coffee, feeling pretty good, and by the time you get up, you just want to jump in front of a truck. They just suck the life out of you. And I've often have shared with many people who, Sharyn, maybe you even heard me say this in the past. I'd rather go eat lunch in the car than eat lunch with an energy vampire. You have to work with these folks, unfortunately, but that's all you need to do. Don't have a break with them. Don't eat your lunch with them. And whatever you do, don't talk about your personal life with them, because they'll suck all the joy out of that too.
Yes. And you mentioned the word narcissist and gaslighting. I am actually going to ask you if you can expound on those two terms.
Sure.
A lot of times, just because someone may not know, or they may have already put their definition on it, but it might not be the full definition or even the accurate one. But You're so right about those. Oh my gosh, I call them emotional vampires. It's exhausting. Can you tell us about the narcissist and gaslighting so we can recognize those behaviors?
I'm happy to do that, because it's so very important when you're trying to determine as a leader or manager, what am I dealing with here? Am I dealing with somebody who's chronically uncivil, or do I really have a bigger problem on my hands here for the staff? Or are my staff really, at the mercy of one or two individuals? And they're not usually on the same shift, by the way. It's usually one individual on that one shift. So the best way for me to describe it is that, we have two types of, broad categories in mental health. You have neurotics and you have psychotics. And, our psychotic people, of course, we're trying to up the ante on mental health and do the best we can for these folks and really get them to be able to live full lives and participate fully in society and life. By and large, most of us, though, are neurotic. Neurotic, to me, is another term for human being. We all have our neuroses, and some of us call it personality, and some of it, call it, my late husband used to say, well, Phyllis, that's part of your charm, it's really just saying, she's a little nuts like this, but it's harmless. The only one she's, making a big deal over is she's only agitating herself. And then we have within the confines of neurosis, we have a subcategory, where we have personality disorders, and the category of narcissism comes under the category of the umbrella of personality disorders. And it's a very, very unique personality, and it's very difficult for professional caregivers to wrap their mind around how a narcissist works, because it's so different from how we feel and work. Most of us have gotten into this profession. However your caregiving manifests If you're working in healthcare or you're working in human services, you're doing it for a reason. And I don't care what your role is, you've chosen this venue for a reason. There's something pulling you that, it's the answer to the universe when the universe said, I need a legion of strong souls to be so generous to the population on this planet. And however that manifested for you, you answered that call. So the fact that you're going to be working with and dealing with someone who's totally focused on themselves is confusing and confounding, because that's not who we are. And a narcissist is just that, the center of the universe, their own little world, and everybody else around, revolves around them. They see themselves as very special, and by God, you better see them as special too, or they're going to make sure that, they make your life a little uncomfortable. They want credit for things they don't do. They don't want to take any ownership or responsibility. So there is a way of being able, the gaslighting, Sharyn, comes in when they confuse and confound. They talk over, around, and through. They say one thing and then they say the other thing, and they blame you for not being smart enough to understand what they're trying to say, because clearly I'm superior to you and you're just not keeping up with me. And then they'll lie to your face and swear on a stack of Bibles that it's the truth. And you, as the, believe it or not, the healthy one in the room, when all of this is going on, you start really questioning yourself. So what a narcissist uses as weapon number one is plausible deniability. So when you were in the workplace, if they start in with, we were talking about ism, Sharyn, and they start dancing around the drain of, well, here's a jab here and here's a jab there and here's something else and, a little something over here, or, an elbow under the net kind of thing. And you're smarting from that. And then you might raise your awareness. You might go to your manager and say, geez, I didn't think the workplace was going to be like this. What's going on here? They'll turn it around to, we were just trying to kid around. We were trying to include you. This is, come on, rites of passage. This is how you get to be a member of the team. You're crazy, you're crazy, you're crazy, you're crazy. You better toughen up, or if you're not going to really make it, plausible deniability, plausible deniability. And this goes on. And the manager, depending on the manager's style of management, will hear what they want to hear. In other words, oh, this is a whole bunch of nothing, and then move on and not really understand what's going on.
Yeah, because they have that lack of empathy and some of the traits that come with narcissists. Go ahead, Lawayne. I'm sorry. That was so good. Thank you.
That was amazing. And don't be sorry, Sharyn. It's so interesting because how many good employees, valued team members have left their jobs or careers because they were in circumstances such as Phyllis just described.
Yes, and it's one of the reasons why dealing with disruptive behavior, is a leadership imperative, because we are bleeding talent. All right. So think of it this way. You've got this person that's destructive, 3 to 5% of your staff that's just truly abusive and targeting people for their own unfathomable reason. All right. But the other larger portion of that disruptive behavior is just annoying and always below the bar, and you're always trying to pick it up and clean up after them, and and then they can't get their work done, so guess who gets there to finish their work for them? And come on, be the company guy. We make the same paycheck. What are you talking about? Why do I have to be the company guy? And this person then says, I'm out of here. I am out of here. There's no point in me staying because it's just too difficult to come to work. If you're spending 1/3 of your life at work, there is a leadership imperative to create a healthy work environment that supports the people that are made for that environment doing the job.
Oh my God.
We spend so much time, and I remember as a nursing director myself, I'm guilty of this myself, that you would put all of your time and energy into the nuisance, trying to get them to see the light, and the other 85% of your staff is suffering from your lack of attention because all of your energy is being taken up by the 5 to the 15, 10 to 15% of the troublemakers.
So one of the things, this is so good. One of the things I often like to say, and it's so simple, but I'm like, the statement, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. And I say yes, once, maybe twice. But if you have a wheel that's been squeaking consistently, recognize you need to replace the wheel. It's like, people are like, well, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. Okay, but you still need to recognize how much oil you're putting in that wheel. That's all right, squeaky wheel. Yeah. It's a sign. It's an indicator that there is something amiss here that needs to be addressed.
That's right. And I love the fact that you say the squeaky wheel gets the oil once, Sharyn. Okay, because the thing is we sometimes can be our own worst enemies as professional caregivers, because we constantly want to give care. It feels so good to be needed. It feels so good to be helpful. It feels so good to serve. I mean, that's our heart and soul, right? It feels so good to serve. Yeah, but that you don't tiptoe over that need to work with somebody, nurture somebody, develop somebody, and then all of a sudden you step over that line and now you're not empowering, you're enabling somebody.
Yeah.
Okay? So, what I usually say is, when someone shows you their real colors, don't repaint them. And how often do you hear people do this? So I know, and I'm again guilty of it myself, when a new person comes on for orientation, what are you going to do? You're going to buddy them with hopefully your best person. Well, guess what? Narcissists stock and trade in longevity and staying with an organization they're usually very smart and very skilled. And they leverage that to make up for their behavior. So that you think twice about letting this person go, because they might be the strongest person on the team, and you kind of ignore and hope that the behavior problems and the destruction that they're calling is going to go the other way. So now it's time to orient with Phyllis. Okay, so Mary, we're going to orient you with Phyllis, and just a heads up, Phyllis can be a handful, and and Phyllis this and Phyllis that, but if you keep your head down, your mouth shut, you're going to get a really good orientation. Now we're all guilty of doing that.
That's right.
Like they're prisons. Like, why are we fronting for disruptive behavior instead of saying, what, we can teach this. The skills and we can onboard this new person without exposing them to this toxic behavior, and somewhat subliminally saying, oh, by the way, this is what our culture's like.
Yes.
No. When it's totally adverse, what's the interesting here, being in healthcare, and at one time of my career, I was a sterile processing technician. And being a sterile processing technician, you deal with a multitude of customers, including operating room nurses, surgical technologists. And some of those relationships have become so strained because we've had leaders in power that would normalize disruptive behavior.
Yes.
They would normalize it.
Great way to put it. They normalize this behavior. Right.
So, hey, I want to ask this question. Actually, we're going to take a really quick, just a real quick commercial break about glitches. Actually, no, we'll do something for the scrub ball, but when we come back, I would like for us to say, like, how does workplace bullying or the incivility, how does it cost the facility beyond the initial instances of bullying, beyond that normalized behavior? Because sometimes, even because we need leadership to recognize this imperative to hit from the top.
Mm-hmm.
If you move something from the bottom, it doesn't change the structure. So we're going to take this quick break. And when we come back, I would love for us to talk about cost in a way that it makes dollars and cents on what this really is looking like. Guys, we'll be right back.
Calling on all healthcare professionals. Healthcare is one of the most emotionally taxing professions in the world. You are dedicated to your patient, and without you, the world is a sad place. Incentives Consult and CS Assist invites you to our very first Scrub Ball.
Excellence, excitement, exhilaration, and everyone in one place. Perioperative, central service, dental, and veterinary. If you're in scrubs, we want you. Scrub Ball 2021. Powerful guest speakers, awards, networking, food, fun, dancing, and celebrating. The Scrub Ball is the ultimate 3-day getaway celebrating Frontline's finest. The best of the field converging in Dallas, Texas, June 17th to 19th, 2021. Don't you miss it. Log on to www.scrubball.org to get your tickets.
All right. And so we're back. We are back. Thank you guys so much for being with us. Please feel free to share this video. I'm going to go and look over some of these questions that are on community as Phyllis and Lawayne are addressing the actual cost. A lot of times, depending on where you are in the organizational structure, your voice is heard, but it may not be actually incorporated as it relates to cost. And sometimes for C-suite or financial decisions, if it doesn't have a cost outside of something that's intangible, then it doesn't get the movement that it requires. Not all the time. And so we want to talk about the actual cost. So Lawayne, Phyllis, can one of you begin to tell me something about the cost of this workplace incivility?
Well, I think Phyllis touched on one very near and dear to my heart. That's the attrition of skilled employees. And she used a different term, but when you have talent leaving the organization, quitting for reasons unbeknownst to, the core reason unbeknownst to many. And at its core, to lose a skilled employee, consider someone goes to orientation, you train them, you invest in that person, all of the skills necessary to make them polished and represent your true culture very well. For them to quit, the time, the energy, the amount of resources is draining, it's draining. So I think that's one course I've seen happen in several organizations that I was happened to be a part of, that attrition of skilled employees.
Right. Yeah. Sharyn, you bring up a good point. When you're trying to make your point with executive leadership or the people who write the checks, or, they have different worries and different concerns than those of us that are at the bedside. And they're there for a reason, to have those administrative and financial and, liability concerns. So you have to speak their language. So to your point, Sharyn, you want to speak in terms of risk. You want to speak in terms of quality. You want to speak in terms of patient satisfaction and family satisfaction. And you want to speak in terms of recruitment and retention. Okay. So I am not certain for the what it takes to turn over a non-nurse in healthcare. But this much I do know: to recruit and orient a nurse, if a nurse leaves, and let's just use round figures. Let's say a nurse is making $50,000 a year, okay? It's going to cost, according to the literature, $150,000 to replace that person. Now, where does that cost come from? Well, that the person who is leaving is probably leaving with vacation time and other time that was not served for the company. That's one thing, okay? The other thing is that you have to probably use overtime or agency or some kind of supplement to make up the hole that staffing person made. You have to pay your staff development department in order to create an orientation. And then you have to pay the nurse or this new onboarding employee, time when they are on orientation and non-productive in their job, but orienting. So that can be anywhere from 1 week to 4 weeks. So it adds up. So I think your best rule of thumb is probably whatever that individual's annual salary commands, times it by 3, and you have probably the cost of what it takes to replace that person should you start bleeding talent.
Yeah.
And go ahead, Lawayne.
There was a report put out by the University of New Mexico, and it said hospitals can lose up to $8 million annually because of nurse turnover and nurse retraining and training, up to $8 million annually. So I
Yes.
posted the link. You can. So what Phyllis has shared is not a mythological number. It's actually quite targeted, and we have some data that you can go research for yourself.
So now let's talk about risk. If you want to have quality, which when you have quality on your unit, you're going to monitor quality, but the essence of quality comes from people who are knowledgeable and competent in the task that is being monitored for quality. Okay, so if you constantly have turnover, if you're constantly using supplemental services that they've never worked in your organization, or somebody got floated in, or you're working short, you can see how that impacts quality, because there's always going to be a knowledge gap. There's always going to be a skill gap. There's always going to be, when you do the root cause analysis on anything that has to do with liability or an adverse event, it's going to come down to, this was probably a new person who wasn't adequately prepared to do what they were doing, or not knowledgeable in the policy and the procedure. So, having a stable staff of high performance, increasing your 85% of folks that are ready, willing, and able to do a good job to 95%, not just decreases your staffing issues and your use of supplemental services, but it creates an environment of safety, because everybody pretty much knows what they're doing and the expectation of the role. Therefore, your departure from evidence-based practice is less. And that is indeed one of the other reasons why you want to absolutely, understand and effectively manage disruptive behavior, because the number one complaint is that it's so disruptive and distracting that it increases, the chance of an untoward event.
Wow.
I want to stay here, but I want to go just a little deeper. And I guess I'm gonna stay here and deviate. That's an oxymoron. But I'm gonna stay here and deviate just a little bit, because for people who are in middle management, oftentimes we look outside of ourselves first. I wish ownership was the first thing that came to mind when we're learning things, but sometimes it's not, and we do blame, or we grant someone responsibility, give them a little more responsibility or power than they actually had. So for someone who believes they're experiencing this, they believe they're immobilized by some of the things going on, that their hands are tied, that they can't move, that they're out of options. What are some tips that we can give? Because during that time is where you see a lot of, during that time, I'm just going to say I've seen, and in my experience with human behavior, studying human behavior, I've seen where people actually do things and it makes it worse, and it actually becomes a projection onto others. And so how would you encourage someone who maybe is that middle nurse, or is that supervisor, or that middle manager, and they're at that V where either they're going to just let it go and take on the toxicity and become a proponent, like a carrier, or like, what are some ways we can encourage them so that you don't, for my people out there listening, so that you don't start doing foolishness and then you blame somebody else and say, well, they did it first. There's still ownership. You don't have to do foolishness because they do. So what are some tips?
So while I agree that attitudes and emotions are contagious, I am not going to push back on that at all. Do you know what I mean? If people are toxic, the chances of the rest of your staff at least being influenced by that toxicity is pretty high. Okay. But I don't find that people who have been bullied go on to bully.
Okay.
That's not what I find. What I find is that the bullies go to grade school and they bully, and then they graduate and go to high school and they bully some more, and then they graduate and go to college and they bully some more, and then they go get a job, and here we are. This bullying is a lifelong
so heartbreaking.
Okay.
That's heartbreaking.
This is who they are. This is who they are. And the person who's chronically uncivil, unfortunately, has probably been this way for half a lifetime, since they were probably old enough to be responsible, high schoolish, maybe college. And it's so annoying, and it takes so much time, effort, and resources and patience to deal with these people that, you just kind of say, okay, the heck with it. Whatever.
I'm out.
I'm either going or I'm just going to put my head down and do my job. And from a leadership standpoint, if 2020 has not taught us anything, it's that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, and that we have to create a healthy work environment so that people are not only knowledgeable and skilled, but they're engaged. They're engaged in doing a good job. They're engaged in watching each other's back. They are engaged in peer support. They are engaged in trying and in being the heroes that we know they are. And to create an environment that doesn't support that, to me, is just a sin against leadership.
Wow. Just today, Phyllis, Sharyn and I was talking about genotype versus phenotype. Is bullying something genetically inherited, or is it something gained from the environment, or both?
Oh, y'all doing it now, knowledge and nonsense.
Let me go pull my degree in psychology and sociology off the wall here and see if I can answer this. It's a great question. And I may not have the most satisfactory answer for you, okay? So again, we do know that it is a personality disorder. Narcissism is a personality disorder, and we know a little bit about personality disorder of narcissism. It's kind of like something we've learned backwards, though, because there's not that many narcissists that will lend themselves to study. Why should they? They're perfect. They're wonderful. There's nothing wrong with them. Wow. It's your problem. Where someone who's neurotic without a personality disorder, just neurotic, will be like, please study me and help me get the handle on this. You know what I mean? Help me figure out why I keep self-sabotaging. So this is one of the things about how are you going to remediate a bully? And my answer to you is you're not. And so let go of it. And don't try. And as professional caregivers, we don't want to hear that, because we honestly think if we put enough effort in, we can cure a rainy day. So we want to, if we just give them that one more class and maybe just try this much harder, they're going to see the light and they're going to be fabulous and wonderful. And the narcissist is telling you exactly what you want to hear, playing you like a fiddle. And, and they're just telling you, gaslighting you, and their behavior will always be cyclical. They're just like any other abusive practice. There is an episode, there is a period of remorse, and then hypervigilance for being the very best person on the planet. And then there's a period of irritability, and everybody knows something's about to happen, and they start placating this person, trying to kind of like, okay, it'll be okay. And, you want to accommodate, you try to accommodate. So there isn't another event, and boom, there's another event. And then they're so remorseful, and it's not me, and if only this, and if only that. The reason why I had another event doesn't belong to me. I can't own it. It's always somebody else. And then the clock starts again. The cycle starts again. It's extremely similar to domestic violence, child abuse, elder abuse, any other form of abusive behavior. Now, the person who's chronically uncivil, now, as a leader, you need to make a determination as to whether these folks are worth the time, effort, and resources, because it's going to take a lot of time, effort, and resources. But if they're high performers who just constantly shoot themselves in the foot, and you think you might be able to turn these folks around with some coaching and some training and some role modeling and a very high degree of expectation of appropriate behavior, well, if you have that time, energy, and resource to do that, you're probably going to get a better employee at the end of that. But that's only for chronically uncivil, because these folks have very low emotional intelligence, and emotional intelligence can be taught. But you cannot undo narcissism. So to answer your question, is it genetic or is it environmental? I'm not even sure we have enough information to come to a conclusion with that. We have some insight based on speaking with either the people who are victimized by narcissists or the narcissists themselves, but it's not because they're being studied, because they don't see a reason to change. And that is the gateway to any positive change, is to say, I can do better and I have personal work to do, and then lean in and do that work with courage and and loving kindness, and you get it done, and it's like chewing on glass, but at the end of it, you're a much more intact whole person, and you're an asset to the team as opposed to a drain on the team. A narcissist can't do that because it's never them.
Oh, wow. That's just so heartbreaking.
Yes.
It's just so heartbreaking, but it's factual. You have to look at it as factual, because if you continue to look at it as heartbreaking, then that caregiver nature kicks in,
right,
and take another lap, Moses.
Right.
We're on the cycle again. That was very, very well. Thank you. Very well spoken. And I do want to just say, you had mentioned, I think you said 3 to 5 or 13 to 15%. So even though there are narcissists out there, a lot of you who are dealing, you're probably going to be more with the incivility,
chronically uncivil,
not the DSM narcissist, the one that there may be hope for,
right.
who's saying study me. And so
but I don't want to create a new norm and say, so, consider yourself lucky, that you're only going, that of the personalities, the disruptive behavior that's creating a toxic work environment. Well, at least most of them are only going to be chronically uncivil and not bullies. This still is a leadership imperative to get your arms around and manage productively and safely, so that you can empower the 85%, 90% of your people who are really trying to do a great job. And it will come down to documentation. So when I said, how do you manage this and keep your career safe? You're going to have to start really taking good notes and creating anecdotal notes, of time, places, events, the incident, what you did in response to the incident. You're probably going to have to do that for several months and then take your concerns to administration and human resources. And essentially say, Houston, I think we've got a problem. And, put your case out there and then say, I need some help in trying to figure out, maybe I can offer an appeal. Maybe there's some magic sauce that, we can offer this person and they will indeed have insight. When you go back to the chronically uncivil, again, a lot of time, effort, and resources. When you go back to the bully, they're going to tell you exactly what you want to hear. Wow, you want to invest in me? I've never had a manager invest in me before. This is wonderful. You're so much better than the last manager we had. Play to your ego, play to your ego, play to your ego. All right. And then play to your caregiver button. I'm so grateful, and I'm going to lean into this training and I'm going to get the most out of it. And thank you very much for believing in me. And that is going to last for X amount of time. And then there will be another episode, because they cannot sustain the promise to change.
Because you can say that again. They cannot sustain the
promise to change. Okay, wow. They cannot sustain it. And the reason they cannot sustain it is they don't believe it.
They don't believe they're wrong.
You say to yourself, why are there so many bullies in healthcare? Because we are, by definition, a caring profession, right? Well, it's kind of like, why do you rob banks? Because that's where the money is, right? So if you are a person who needs to be around people who will always move the finish line because they're caring for you, nurturing you, trying to invest in you, well, then go to healthcare, because the place is loaded with them.
Wow. That's where you're going to get your needs met. That's where you're going to have an endless supply.
That's where your plausible deniability is going to take hold. Unless we raise awareness about what gaslighting is about what the characteristics of a narcissist is all about, and that you can then all of a sudden, it's like the veil is lifted and you can see this. And at first you're mortified because you've just been played like a fiddle, but you got to get over that and say, well, now I have to work with my team. I have to collaborate with executive leadership and human resources, and we got to get this done. And I'm not going to blow smoke. This is why I say you have to have a collaboration. Depending on how long that person has worked with the organization, you're looking at anywhere between 12 months and 2 years of documentation before you can exit them.
Wow.
Today, earlier on Clubhouse, one of the ladies was saying how she has stepped in to try to protect someone else. And she literally said the amount of retaliatory behavior that came toward her, it even went to where she parked. And my heart was breaking for her because I knew she was just trying to help. And she said, what did she say? She said she was able to stay there like a couple of more years, but
Yeah.
yes, she couldn't because
Right. Because a narcissist is compelled not to get angry, but get even. So
wow, that's crazy.
It is.
And that if I give you feedback, Sharyn, if I give you feedback and say, listen, Sharyn, about that last project, you killed it with 88% of it. What you did was fabulous. And I really want to showcase that. 12%, I think we can work with to even polish a little bit more. A narcissist will hear that as a threat to their entity because their personality is so fragile and their need to be perfect is so strong that if you're getting insight into their fragility, if you're seeing the cracks in the armor, I just don't get angry at you. I have to destroy you because you're now a threat.
I become a threat.
That's right.
Yep.
Yes.
That's
right. I've experienced it firsthand.
Right, which is why you don't make a move without administration and human resources at one hand and the other, and you have this coordinated effort to roll out a plan of correction, over time that will withstand a wrongful termination suit or anything else that an arbitrator might, if you have to go in front of an arbitrator. So when you are documenting, one of the things I recommend in the book is that you create a spreadsheet. So that, if a person's going to target people, they're not going to target just one individual. They're going to target a vendor, and then they're going to target somebody who floated, and they're going to target, all of a sudden they're targeting a family member, or, maybe they have, something going on with a certain subset of patients and they're targeting that patient. And it's just there, and you create this spreadsheet so that when you put this in front of HR, it's undeniable that we have a problem.
So it's so heavy,
but it's so real because this is what drives the behaviors. So often we have drivers and people look at so many other things as the drivers because you can see, feel, touch. But there are things that are really your drivers as far as workplace culture. Then you're right. It is imperative from the leadership level down because these are the true movers and shakers. These things right here is so impact. I don't care how good your program or I don't care. You can have the shiniest, newest of everything. But if you don't deal with this, every initiative will come right back to this same cycle.
I could not agree with you more, because here's what happens. You do something and you think you're being so magnanimous as a manager, and that you're being played by this narcissist. And your staff, the 85%, are sitting there going, that just didn't happen. Did that just happen? I can't believe that happened.
Right.
And why are you buying that? Can't you see it for what it is? And you have to be very careful that you're not caught up in your own ego to self-delude that you're being effective in a situation that has no other outcome than the person going to the door.
It's just amazing. And to our knowledge and nonsense viewers, you should have had your notepad down, your pen and pencil. You still got a few minutes to get them out for this next question. Phyllis, where can they find your book? Where can they find you?
And the link is already in the comments. The link is already in the comments for the book. So go ahead, Phyllis.
So I invite every one of your listeners and yourselves to visit my website. It is M as in Michael, F as in Frank, W as in William, mfwconsultants.com. Pardon me. And you can see all the services I have. If you are, if you need some one-to-one coaching and you're trying to untie the knot of either being at the mercy of someone who's been bullying, or you're just trying to recover from COVID-19, meaning the psychological aspects of our collective efforts to respond to COVID-19, you can reach out to me. And I do have special pricing for AORN members, or you can go to my store tab, and that's where you can find the book. All right. Bringing shadow behavior into the light of day, understanding and effectively managing bullying and incivility in healthcare. That book is also on Amazon in Kindle version. And if you just put my name in and then shadow behavior bullying, that should pop up. But as Sharyn so kindly shared, the links are here for you.
Guys, I'll ask. I don't know. But maybe We'll talk to her about some SPD packages as well. I know she's connected to Hank with
I
Beyond
will
Clean.
make those in
So
a
good to see
heartbeat.
you, Hank. Yeah. And so same thing here with Knowledge and Nonsense. We want you to have these tools. And Lawayne said, take notes. Listen, I know you can listen to this time and time again, but oftentimes when real wisdom is being dropped, there are things that it's going to facilitate aha moments for you. And I want you to go ahead and write those things down. Don't be like, I'll remember later. You have like 50 to 70,000 thoughts a day. Trying to remember one thought is like trying to find Where's Waldo. And maybe I'm dating myself. Maybe you don't know about Waldo, but for those of you who do, you know you need to write it down. Um, so yeah, I'm so glad. I wanted to ask the question, Hank, Casey, yeah, the bullying behaviors, you're right. And Hank had asked this question, so I wanted to read it and give you an opportunity as
Sure.
it said, how should leaders who see all this negative behavior firsthand deal with / communicate with HR who may be much more reticent to act because all they see and hear is what the narcissist tells them? And then there's a similar question. How should frontliners engage their managers who may not see this behavior even though it's happening in the department? So I'm going to put it back on the screen.
Boy, those are two
Okay.
brilliant questions. First of all, the first question intimates to something that I haven't said yet, but is so very important if you're a manager leader to understand. When you are trying to figure out if you're dealing with someone who's chronically uncivil or if you're dealing with a real bully, one of the hallmark characteristics of a true narcissistic bully is that they leapfrog middle management. So instead of going to their assistant nurse manager or their immediate manager, frontline manager, they want to go directly to the director or the executive director because they're so special. And if you were special and understood my needs, you wouldn't be in the middle. You'd be somebody up high and important. So right. You're obviously, like a middle manager, nothing. And how could you understand my specialness? Because you're not special yourself. I have to leapfrog you and go directly to the high folk who, of course, then will be in a position of worthiness to appreciate my specialness.
Wow.
When you have somebody who chronically leapfrogs and tries to access inappropriate people without going through the chain of command on a consistent basis, even though you're redirecting them, that is a hallmark sign of narcissism. Okay. So to answer the first question, you have to study and you have to, that's why my book is not talking about bullying and incivility. It's kind of like the meat and potatoes of what to do next, understanding and effectively managing. And it really is, the minute, more than likely, by the time you say to yourself, I think I have a problem, you have a problem. You just don't want, oh God, I've got a problem, and you have to deal with it. And it's going to be arduous and it's going to be like chewing on glass, but you need to do it, right? So that's the time to get to administration and to human resources right away. So that you have to say, my anticipation is this person's already leapfrogged once or twice. My anticipation is as soon as I start to do some corrective action with this person, that they're going to retaliate because this is how I know these folks react, and that they're probably going to make a beeline for your office, and they're going to register a complaint about my harassing them when we're really trying to deal with their incivility and bullying. And they're going to try to flip it around so that, and this is why you have to partner so that your reputation and your employment isn't at jeopardy. Wow. So early, proactive and early. And this is one of the reasons why I want to have, a lot of organizations have 3-month probation periods, right? And I think I'm an advocate of the 6-month probation period. And the whole thing is that even if you date somebody for 3 months, they can usually be on their good behavior and kind of sustain what you want to believe for 3 months, right, Sharyn? And
yeah.
And then, but at 6 months, you really know what you got. It's like they can't fool you for 6 months, and it's the same thing with your employees. We have to get away from the term and the mindset of an employee and think more in terms of citizenship. And when you are interviewing someone for your department, you want to ask them right up front, do you want to be a citizen of this department, and why? Because our team, citizenship into our team is something to cherish and work for, because our team is the best. We're the best team in the organization. And we're very guarded about letting new folk in. So we want to welcome you, and we want to include you. But you really, we're not just looking for someone who's coming in and picking up a paycheck and whatever. We want you to invest. We want you to engage. We want you to have peer support. We want you to risk giving, ideas that we can use to make the whole system better. If you're going to we want you to become a citizen of this organization. When you start having that kind of mindset and you start creating that kind of language when you're interviewing, you are definitely going to filter out people who are not there, because that's language you will use all along that 6-month probationary period.
That's right.
Bob, I'm afraid I saw you interact with Bill, and that's not citizenship behavior.
Wow. I'm going to use that.
Yeah,
That's
indeed.
Powerful.
Indeed. It's calling it out on its face and setting a tone for success.
But just really bringing back what we said at the interview. I shared with you, we don't have employees here, at XYZ. We have citizens, and that's not citizenship behavior. That's certainly not the kind of behavior that we promote here.
I love that. That fosters ownership from the get-go. Hey, this is so good, and we could keep going on. Phyllis, I'm just saying, you definitely have an invitation. I hope that you will come back. You answered all of the questions. So y'all listen to this. Put this on your podcast. Get this in. For those of you who are like, I want to be in leadership, and also to be aware of the type of leader you may unwittingly be becoming if you're not aware of your practices. So love it. Don't be mad over the correction. Awareness drives behavior. Get this information, get this knowledge, and move forward. This is why we say knowledge or nonsense. If you're doing nonsense and you don't know it, I'm sorry, but we're bringing knowledge to you so you don't have to continue those practices. We want everything to be better, improving, life-giving, sustainable. So everyone is like, yes, we're citizens. This is citizenship. You guys have anything further before we take it out?
This is a great conversation, and I'm putting this in the category of EBC, evidence-based conversation. So many people have learned from this preview. I urge everyone to get the book and become a citizen in your organization.
Thank you so very, very much. What a wonderful conversation this has been, and I cannot thank you more for giving me a forum for this, because at this stage in my career, creating healthy work environments is something I'd like to consider my legacy, and you're really giving me a platform to help try to raise that awareness and make that a reality. Thank you both.
Thank you so much. We're all healthcare. You're always welcome here. Hug, hug, hug.
Hug, hug, hug.
I know. Okay, so we're gonna go. Thanks so much, you guys. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for looking. If you have questions and you see this later, just text it to the 214-717-5921. Please go to the YouTube page, Knowledge or Nonsense, and subscribe. You can find us on all platforms. We're on LinkedIn. If there's a topic, if there's something within healthcare that you want to know about, or you feel like someone else should know about, let us know. We're here for knowledge or nonsense, and we want to vet the practices, the processes, and yes, sometimes even the perspectives that govern our actions, and say, is it knowledge or is it nonsense? Y'all have a good night. Lawayne, Phyllis, thank you so much.
Good night.
Good night.